So, in a paper, the experimental and conceptual innovators in the sciences, the cases of Darwin and Einstein, David W. Galenson and Clayne Pope put it best when they stated, over the past century, Albert Einstein has become an iconic symbol of scientific genius. No other scientific figure has permeated popular culture to such an extent. No other scientific formula approaches the fame of E equals mc squared. For most of the general public, however, the concept of relativity marks a barrier to knowledge of the physical world that limits their understanding. As the preeminent scientist of the 20th century, Einstein helped establish the dominance of the conceptualist as the primary model of innovation in science. Discussing the boundaries of our universe, the laws by which it follows, and everything in between, none of it is even remotely explainable nor understandable without adherence to the discoveries made by Einstein. Einstein fundamentally invented the theoretical scale through which physics is most commonly studied through, and at the time of his education, no less, as Galenson and Pope acknowledged. Quote, as a student, he has subjected teachers to a bemused derision because they were concerned with what he considered old physics rather than with the new conceptual developments of atomic particles and fields, end quote. For example, Einstein's theory of general relativity and special relativity, respectively, are both huge achievements, but what they wonderfully demonstrate, even more than his groundbreaking insight and intellect, was rather the very demonstration of that fact. Einstein sought simple explanations to a variety of complex phenomena, blanket answers that could be laid over many holes in the understanding of reality that existed at the time. From his theories of relativity at the turn of the century to particle movement to one of his most ambitious objectives of his life, unified field theory, Einstein demonstrated that he had, quote, little, if any, interest in filling the nooks and crannies of physics, end quote. Einstein's desire for these simplified explanations outlined in a famous quote from a 1934 lecture of his, quote, our experience up to date justifies us in feeling sure that in nature is actualized the ideal of mathematical simplicity. That continues in essence to this day in the continually, exponentially expanding, no pun intended, field of physics. But what Einstein's advancements in the field represent is not only an expansion of our knowledge in the field, but also an expansion of who we find in that field. If we fall back to what Galenson and Pope have to say in their paper, for most of the general public, the concept of relativity marks a barrier to knowledge of the physical world that limits their understanding. That's what they had to say. And this truth continues to permeate. However, Einstein's solutions only created more questions. And for that reason alone, it is not unreasonable to believe that has only expanded the desire for learning by the masses. At no other point in history, except for maybe the mid-20th century with the prospects of sci-fi like space travel and interplanetary living, have people had more hope for actually becoming a multiplanetary species. There are even more contributions to the name of science Einstein advanced and can take credit for, such as, albeit his limited involvement in, say, the Manhattan Project or his ambitious theory of everything, which is related to the unified field theory. But if nothing less, Einstein's single greatest contribution to the sciences was the questions that he poised for future generations. More and more are we, just average people, thanks to technology, pushing the limits of our own understanding.